You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're talking about Colorado. So, Lauren?
Yes, Kenzie.
Let's get scary.
Mackenzie is very excited about this episode, and I'm very curious as to why. She came in with like this smile.
Yes.
Yes.
But before we get into it, I have some stories, and I wrote them down on my reminders to remember to talk about them.
Oh.
Anytime I think of something that I find particularly amusing, I want to tell you.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think it's a funny story. And I have to write it down. So, there's obviously a fire or two happening.
Or multiple.
To our neighbors in the north. And so hopefully everyone is okay.
Yeah, it's scary.
So yesterday we were sitting at recess and there's these two boys in third grade sitting at the picnic table. And one of them goes, oh, I think the air quality is bad. Like my eyes are hurting. And I'm like looking around. It's sunny, blue skies.
Oh.
I'm like, the pollen time is kind of over. What are you talking about? And one of the other third grade teachers, like, I guess looked it up and she's like, oh yeah, like you're right. Like for sensitive people, like it wasn't a great air quality. He's like, yeah, that's what I thought. Cause I could like see the fog. And I was like, see the
Wow.
And I'm like looking around.
Little intuitive child.
Well, I like mouthed to the other teacher. I was like, see the fog. Like stupid. So obviously don't say that to the child.
Right.
And so, but she saw my face of like, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so go home, get settled, realize I left something in my car, go back out. Oh, you know what? I guess it is kind of hazy. Interesting. Maybe he was right. Get my stuff, go sit down, get an alert on my phone a little bit later. Canada has wildfires and it's affecting the air quality in the eastern United States or wherever. And I was like, ooh. So I screenshotted it and I sent it to my coworker and I said, damn, I feel like an asshole. I guess he really could see the fog.
Dang.
Yeah. And then this morning
It was bad this morning.
This morning when I left, it was definitely hazy. And it smelled, like this time it smelled. Yesterday I didn't smell anything.
No, yeah, yesterday I didn't smell anything, but today I walked out my front door and I was like, oh my God.
It definitely smelled like there was a fire.
I thought there was a fire and then it's super hazy and everyone at work were like, that's all everyone's talking about. Like, oh my God, it's so hazy.
Of course.
And then we didn't go on our 1:00 walk because
it's hazy.
It's hazy. And we have a happy hour tomorrow with my company at one of the breweries that's outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, and it's like super high up. It's on the 11th floor. So I'm like,
well, yes, this one.
Yes. I was like, is this going to happen?
Is this absolutely necessary?
Because I want to go, but like if it's going to be super smoky and you're not supposed to be out in it.
Yeah.
It's like really bad in New York where we were reading an article and one article said that if you're outside in it for like an hour or two, it's like you just smoked 6 cigarettes.
Yep. And comparatively, it is one of the worst air qualities in the world. Next to New Delhi.
Oh my gosh.
In terms of like air pollution. Because of the fires, not just in general.
Yeah.
We had to have indoor recess today, which
God.
Indoor recess is already a nightmare. Then indoor recess when it's sunny, I wanted to kill myself.
As I was driving into work today, I was like, this is how the world ends. It's going to block out the sun. All the crops are going to die and then we're going to die.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's kind of where I feel like we're heading.
Yeah.
Because for it to go from Canada to Virginia.
Well, and like, I guess Canada, like on the west side, like our western United States, it's normal for them to have wildfires during this time. But this article I read out of Toronto said that because of climate change, they said it was getting warmer earlier. So, or like because of the weather, the season was starting earlier and it was lasting longer.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that 50% of wildfires are from humans.
Well, duh.
Go us.
Only 50%?
I don't know if they were meaning in general or if they meant 50% of these fires. I'm not sure.
Okay.
They also said, so will this get better? Probably not. Unless governments become proactive instead of reactive.
Wow.
I did a whole bunch of stuff today.
Seems like it.
We started making our field day sign.
Oh,
We're going to be Miss Nils Otters.
of course.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, I talked to Mom about New York.
Yes.
So I told her about all the things we talked about. I wrote it all down.
Of course, naturally.
So that I can remember. Here we go. Okay. So I asked her about Amityville because she's from Long Island.
Right.
But by the time that most of that stuff was happening, she was in college.
Ugh.
And she said that when all this stuff happened, like the actual murder and everything, she didn't know about it until the movie came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then everyone was like, oh my God, did you hear? And so when I asked her, I'm like, did you or anybody you know go check out the house? She was like, absolutely not. I was like,
So very much like you.
oh, for sure. Hello. Duh. Even now, I'm like, I'll watch more things than my mom will.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's saying something.
Yeah. And so then I asked her about the blackout.
Mm-hmm.
And so she definitely remembers it, obviously. And because she was on Long Island, she had no idea it was the whole city until afterwards.
Oh.
This is going to trigger some of you. It's going to trigger you specifically.
Oh, God, why?
Her best friend at the time, her dad worked in the city.
I can already see where this is going.
He was stuck in an elevator.
Oh, for how long?
I think the whole time.
How long was it down for?
25 hours. Now, it could have been just through the night and during the daytime, they could get more people. But yeah.
What do you do in that situation? Oh my God, because the electricity went out and so there's no lights. So you're just in a dark box.
See, so what I explained to my mom, I was like, see, Lauren and I are going to freak out about this for very different reasons. Lauren is going to be freaked out that we're trapped in a box.
What is your freak out
I'm
reason?
going to be freaked out that we're trapped in a box that's like 50 feet up in the air.
See, that part doesn't bother me.
Yes, but you're not afraid of heights.
Yes, I am.
Then no, you're not, because you're not afraid of the elevator falling.
Yeah, because I know it's not gonna.
What's the worst that could happen if you stuck in a box?
You could die. Mom likes to say all the time, she's like, no one's ever opened an elevator and skeletons have fallen out. And I'm like,
true. They're always at the bottom. Because the elevator has fallen and they have died. That's exactly what happens. Because my thing with heights is not so much being up high, it's falling off. So like I could be up on the 10th floor, but I'm not going to be at the ledge of the balcony. I'm going to be backed up. But like if my sister is like holding out her phone over the balcony, I start freaking out.
Yeah, I'm scared it's going to fall.
Exactly. If someone is like sitting on a ledge, I can't look at them.
Ooh,
because
like
I start to panic.
those videos of people who go to like Dubai or something and they'll go up like on one of those really high buildings and be on the top.
There.
But just watching it doesn't give you anxiety?
Well, I don't watch those things.
Oh, I do. Because they come up and then
silly.
I watch it. And then I'm like, oh.
No, mine is only really like I'll probably get like a little uneasy. But my biggest thing is if I'm there and I can see you.
Yeah, no, I can't ever.
Which is why I don't like elevators. Not because I'm worried about being in a small box. I'm worried about the box falling. So, but yeah, so he was stuck in an elevator. Nobody knew where anybody was because there was no cell phones. And yeah, other than that.
I can't even imagine. I think I would die.
Oh, for
sure. Like I really truly think I would die.
Be literally scared to death.
I really do think that's what would happen.
Yeah. And then I think probably what would happen is you would die out of pure fear. And then I would die out of also pure fear because one, now I'm alone. Because you fucking died on me. And two, I'm like, okay, well, if she's dead, I'm not going to stick around. And I probably will either die out of fear or die of a broken heart.
Oh, or both.
Or both.
God.
I know. As soon as my mom told me that, I immediately started panicking.
I can't even.
Like,
I can't even.
Just the thought of it was like, oh, yeah, I know. But then, so that was that part. And so then she hadn't heard about like the case specifically that I had talked about. She didn't even know the name of the area.
Oh.
But it was in Brooklyn. I don't know how often she was. I don't know. I don't know how much people from New York City understand all the parts of New York City.
Yeah.
Of course, then I was like, well, what about Son of Sam?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you remember that? She's like, oh, yes, of course, because she was like freaking out. I guess she said at first she thought she was fine because she had blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then he killed someone with blonde hair.
Yeah.
But she does remember that and like just being utterly terrified.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah.
Wow.
I know, right? It's wild.
See, and you would have never asked those questions.
I know.
You know?
I know.
Just like random things that we never knew about your mom.
Right. Like you don't put those things into context.
No.
You know, because like your parents are with you, so you don't put into context that they were around during
like
some
that they
of
had a
these
life
time.
without you.
Yeah. Because I was saying to her, I was like, I'm not sure if you remember these things, because like Lauren and I were talking about how we probably won't remember some of the major stuff that happened, or at least the details of it. And she was like, well, I don't remember anything about Vietnam. I said, I know, you were like 8. I wasn't going to ask you about that. Like, I know there's a certain window.
Right.
And so she was like, well, when all this stuff happened? I was like, I don't know, late 70s. She was like, oh, yeah, I was in high school. I was like, I know. That's why I figured you remember.
You know what? I'll have to ask my parents, because if it was late 70s, they would have been in their teens.
Yeah, my mom was 17 at the time.
Yeah.
Or 16, about to turn 17.
Because my parents were born in 64.
So they would have been 13.
Yeah. So I wonder if they like, obviously they're not going to remember a ton, but I wonder what they do remember.
Well, and my mom said that a big thing at her house was like the news was always on.
Mm-hmm.
People, like her parents always talked at the table about it versus, yeah, the news was on, but it like our parents didn't talk about it because they were talking to us.
Right.
You know? So she was like, I actually remember a lot more. And I was like, okay. So.
Fascinating.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And like I had to like break it down for her. I'm like, Mom, there's one murder the whole time. And there was a serial killer on the loose.
Oh,
and there was only one murder.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I told my mom about it too. And she was like, just one? And I was like, I know. And she's like, that's wild. I was like, I know.
And I think that's it. I think those are all my stories for you.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go to Colorado.
Yeah.
These are exciting stories. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Colorado was the first state to consent to universal suffrage.
What?
Colorado was the first state.
What's suffrage?
Like allowing
Voting?
women to vote.
What is universal suffrage, though? Like everybody can vote?
In the state, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. It never made sense to me. Why are you going to call it suffrage? Because it sounds like you're suffering.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like,
there'll be those things people do. They'll walk around a city and they're like, hey, we're trying to sign a petition to end women's suffrage. And people are like, yeah, let's end it. And they sign it not knowing that women's suffrage means women voting.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a good name.
No.
In the 1880s, 1/3 of Colorado's population had tuberculosis, giving it the nickname of World Sanitarium.
Ew.
Oh, God. 29% of the state is non-religious, just like Rhode Island.
So 29 is not religious.
Correct. Colorado.
It seems like that makes more sense at it being a bit.
Oh my God.
Well, because Colorado's bigger.
Percentages are percentages.
I understand, but when you think about Colorado,
No.
I mean Rhode Island.
No.
Yes.
Colorado is also claiming that they invented the teddy bear, which I talked about for Mississippi.
Lies.
So both claim that they invented the teddy bear.
Lies.
Colorado says that they invented it as a gift to give Teddy Roosevelt.
Lies.
Well, who are we going to believe, Colorado or Mississippi?
It's New York.
Oh, they invented the teddy bear?
When I was doing the state firsts, one of them was the
Why does everyone claim the teddy bear? So it's Colorado, Mississippi, and New York.
And they all said it was for
it.
Teddy Roosevelt.
See, I knew that part. I knew that part about teddy bears, that it was for Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah. But New York sounded like they had a more legit reason. It was like something like
Mississippi had a good reason too. There's just something about hunting and he didn't want to kill a bear.
Yeah, that's what New York said. Maybe this story was in national news and everyone got an idea. Okay, cool. Ay.
All right. All right, so I think you mentioned this after your Colorado trip when you were talking about it.
Mhm.
So the largest preserved set of dinosaur tracks
Yeah.
in the world are at Picket Wire Canyon.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there are more than 13,000 steps there, like 13,000 dinosaur steps that range roughly 1/4 mile.
Crazy.
Colorado Springs is one of the sunniest places in the country, experiencing more than 300 days of sunshine a year.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Why? That's 65 days without sunshine.
Or just rain or foggy or cloudy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's why they were saying like this big thing about like, Florida's not the sunshine state. This isn't the sunniest place. Like, here is the sunniest place.
I need to move there and just sit in the sun.
All right, our next trip. When we go to Colorado, we can go there. Colorado Springs. The people of Fruta celebrate a festival known as Mike the Headless Chicken. It is celebrated in honor of Mike, a chicken that lived for 18 months without a head.
Good for Mike.
Good for Mike. There is a prison located in Florence that is called the Supermax, and it is the highest security level federal prison in the country. It houses domestic and international terrorists as well as double agents. Mm-hmm. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park inspired Stephen King's The Shining.
Okay. Pause. So, when I was deciding between the two, I saw that one.
Oh, what to cover?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, this would be funny because I've never seen, nor will I ever watch this movie. I have no idea what the premise is about. Couldn't fucking tell you. How hilarious would it be if I did a whole thing about this haunted hotel that's the setting for this creepy, scary movie, and the irony would just be hilarious.
That would be hilarious.
But then I was like, this sounds like a place that everybody knows about. Because as soon as I told you about the creepy hotel that Allie was talking about, immediately you knew what I was talking about. And
I was
it's
super famous.
No idea. So that's why I went with what I got.
Okay. So Colorado also has the Gates of Hell, and it is located near Riverdale Road in Thornton County. It is said that this road leads to rusted iron gates.
I feel like at this point, it's like every state has a Springfield.
Yeah.
Every state has a Gates of Hell.
Yes, pretty much.
There's entryways anywhere you go. Hell is very accessible.
Thank God. Oh.
That was great. I did tell Mom about the first blunder, and I was like, yeah, I didn't realize that Amityville was an actual place. And so, of course, she naturally started laughing at me. And I said, okay, but you know what? I got Lauren back because I said gentrified, and she goes, is that when old people move in?
It was not our best moments.
It's okay. My mom told me how when my dad was first coming to meet her parent or my grandparents,
right?
She was saying that he's from New Orleans. And my grandma was like, oh, is that in Florida? My mom was like, no, it's a state.
Oh, God.
I was like, okay, I feel much better now.
Everyone has, okay, my mom's one stupid moment was they were going somewhere to some game or something, and there were geese all in an enclosure.
Uh-huh.
And she just had a brief thought of, how did those geese get in there?
Oh,
and then she thinks, did one leader goose open up the gates while the other geese could get in? And then she remembered they fly. Everyone has their moments. Okay, so these gates of hell, they open to a place of satanic worship and human sacrifices. You will also find the charred remains.
See, that's what we need.
What?
Screw humane death by injection bullshit. You are an icky, shitty blech of a human being. The worst of the worst. You get sacrificed.
So we're going back to the Inca Mayan times.
Yeah. I feel like given how many men are criminals over women, especially violent criminals.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little bit of comeuppance for the witch trials. But
see, these ones, it wouldn't just be
no, it'd be better because they'd be justified.
Right, exactly.
But, okay, well, we're going to stone you.
And then maybe we do need to appease some gods because a lot's going wrong right now.
I'm telling you, here's my theory. I thought long and hard about this one.
Okay.
So, at some point, I watched Down to Earth with Zac Efron.
Okay.
Oh my God. Yes, I watched it originally the first season because, hello, Zac Efron.
Right.
But then it was also very fascinating. And so he goes to these different places around the world and like amplifies what kind of natural thing that they might be known for.
Oh.
So like he went to this place in Italy where people like the average lifespan is like in the hundreds, like 101. So he obviously went, what's the secret? That kind of thing. And so this next season was all in Australia. And each segment of wherever he was going, whatever he was covering, a part of it included what kind of the traditions from the Aboriginal people and what they did. And so as I'm watching this, I think to myself, I'm like, okay, you know, you hear them talk about like how they would give back to the earth and or give thanks for it or, you know, just be respectful to the space while, you know, taking what they needed and nothing more, kind of all that. And I'm like, maybe because they were technically all the original people.
Yeah.
Maybe what happened is our dumb white asses came in, fucked shit up, and some egotistical asshole tried to say that there was one God in the sky and that he knew him.
They always do.
Right. And so maybe if you believe in a higher power, which like some people are like, I don't believe in God, but I believe in a higher power.
Right.
You know, something, how do we get something from nothing?
Yeah.
So maybe that's what put us here. We come in, fuck everything up. Now they're mad. And I'm like, okay, I think if we all just stop and do exactly what the Native Americans did, I think we'll be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they'll be happy.
Yeah.
I think we might be able to put everything back in equilibrium and we got to learn from them and how they like respect the earth and what they do. And if that means some bad guys get a human sacrifice,
then so be it.
Then so be it. So that's my theory, that Mother Earth is legit pissed off.
I believe it.
Yeah.
But so back to this
right.
Gates of Hell place. So you'll also find the charred remains of an old mansion there, and it is said that this mansion will lead you directly to hell.
I wish I was brave enough to go do these things.
See, I do too, but like I think that they could actually happen, and I don't want
it's like one of those things where I'm like, would it probably happen? But knowing my luck, I'm going to go and it's going to be legit.
Or like all of those games, like scary games. I want to hear people tell about playing it, but I don't ever want to play it because I don't think that it would actually happen. But if on the off chance that it does happen, I don't want to be a part of it.
It's like my theory with ghosts. I believe in you because I don't want you to prove me otherwise.
Yeah. Perfect. Yes. All right. So Netherland, which is just a place, it holds a body that has been cryogenically frozen for years. What?
My story includes that place.
Oh. Yeah. Interesting. I really have no idea what your story's about. The term cheeseburger was trademarked in 1935 by Louis Ballast, apparently also in Colorado. Frank J. Wisner invented a treat known as the Black Cow in 1893. It is now commonly known as a root beer float.
Oh.
I hate root beer.
Ugh.
The first
You don't like soda.
No, I don't.
So
I also, nope. When I first started dating Joe, I was like, if you drink root beer, like that's fine, but you can't kiss me.
Oh, it's really that bad for you?
I hate it. I hate the smell of it. I hate the taste of it.
I love root beer.
I hate everything about it.
I can't. I used to like the root beer in the beer bottle looking things.
Yeah, I think that's why everyone liked root beer because it looked like beer. And so when they're like 7,
and it had the name in it.
They look so cool drinking root beer.
And it's as thick as beer.
Yeah, nope, can't do it.
Pure sugar.
Can't do it. The first Chipotle opened in Denver in 1993.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
The first license plate was issued in Denver in 1908. Bill Harmston invented Jolly Ranchers.
Wait a minute. When I was looking at New York for state first, it said it was the first state to require a license plate.
I'm just saying the first license plate was issued in Denver. Like it doesn't mean like maybe the first license plate in the whole world or the whole state, country was issued in Denver. It could just be the first license plate in Denver happened to be issued in the state. 1908. Yeah. Bill Harmston invented Jolly Ranchers in 1949.
Nice.
And Tim Allen is from Colorado.
Nice.
There weren't a lot of people from Colorado that I could find, actually.
Desperado.
All right, Mackenzie. what is this story that you have for us today?
Okay. So, blanket, we're going to start off right with this from the beginning. Definitely major trigger warnings. This story contains topics of sexual assault and abuse, substance abuse and addiction, and suicide, so please be advised. But if you or someone you know is or was a victim of sexual assault, you can call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-4673. And for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, you can call or text 988. And we will also have those in our show notes.
Mm-hmm.
If you decided to stick around, buckle up. So, the best way to describe this story is that anything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Isn't that called Murphy's Law?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they could have gone right had certain people done their job.
Is this going to make me mad?
It might make you a little irritated.
Okay.
Not as
Great.
mad as the other one,
Great.
but definitely like, what the fuck?
Okay.
In fact, by the end of this story, you'll have lost count with the amount of times that you have said, what the fuck?
Okay.
Feel free to count and let us know how many you got. And if you're listening to us in the comfort of your own home and of legal drinking age, feel free to make this a fun little drinking game.
I was literally just thinking that. I was like, how drunk would we get in this episode?
Yep. And please drink responsibly.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to our two favorite pedias, Wiki and Murder. I thought it was so funny. I was like, this is hilarious.
That is hilarious.
For providing information from multiple perspectives. I've attempted today to describe the full view of this case, meaning trying to give you everyone's perspective. Think of me like a Netflix documentary that winds time forward and backwards throughout the story. But I promise not to make you dizzy, but I do promise sound effects. So like any good story, let's start from the beginning. So, Scott Lee Kimball was born in Boulder, Colorado in 1966. His parents divorced when he was 10 years old after his mother came out as lesbian.
Oh.
His father moved to Montana and got remarried. Scott didn't take the divorce well and had his first run-in with the law at a young age after he shot a gun out his window at a neighbor's house.
Like a real gun?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Scott and his younger brother Brett would often stay with their grandmother at Lafayette's Skylark Mobile Home Park. That's where he met 41-year-old computer programmer Theodore Payton. Payton would take Scott to his cabin in Netherlands Baker Reservoir.
And also Theodore. I have a Theodore in my story.
Hopefully he's not as terrible as this one. It wouldn't be long before Payton would take advantage of the troubled youth and establish a relationship with Scott.
Okay.
He groomed the young child by showering him with gifts and always showing him a good time.
And what are their ages?
Theodore is 41.
Okay.
Scott is 10.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah. Scott, of course, trusted him, and Payton used that to his advantage. So, you get to choose your own adventure.
Oh, God. Okay.
Do you want the details or skip the details?
I think we'll take the details, and then anyone who doesn't want the details can skip.
Okay. So, eventually, he would start having Scott pose for naked photos, look through pornographic magazines while he was pleasuring himself in front of Scott.
God.
As Scott got older, the abuse got worse and more sadistic. Payton would put alcohol in Scott's orange juice and force him to play truth or dare. Payton was molesting and eventually raping Scott on a regular basis. Payton told Scott if he ever told anyone, he would kill his parents. One time, he brandished a gun while he threatened to kill Scott's father if Scott said anything to anyone. Scott finally moved in with his dad and brother in Montana to start high school. Sadly, the abuse would continue whenever Scott would come back to Colorado to visit his mom and grandmother.
Aww.
The abuse went on for 7 years.
Jeez.
Scott dropped out of high school and began work hunting and guiding clients on big expeditions in the Bitterroot Mountains. So Scott Lee Kimball earned his first felony charge at 22 in 1988 for writing bad checks at Montana hotels. That same year, he was also charged for passing a bad check in Missoula County and for breaking into 2 Broomfield homes where he stole a fishing pole, 2 rifles, and a shotgun.
Of all the things.
I know. Kimball went on a hunting trip with his brother in western Montana in October of 1889. No, 1989. Kimball had returned to the motel room alone and put the 30 to 30, I don't know what the measure is, to 30-30. Don't know what that is.
30 by 30, maybe?
Well, it wasn't an X.
I don't know.
Anyway, the rifle to his forehead and pulled the trigger. The bullet glanced off his skull and combined with the back blast from the shot would tear a hole in his forehead. Kimball was in the hospital for several days in critical condition.
Oh my God.
But he survived. Kimball's cousin, Ed Coate, would later say that his cousin dramatically changed after his suicide attempt. He said, quote, it's like he lost his conscience. He was never the same after that. When I read that, I was like, well, no shit.
Yeah. Traumatic brain injury.
And it's also like, of all ways, that's usually the one that you got the best chances. Like, when Kimball recovered, he and several other young men told Boulder County Sheriff's investigators about Theodore Payton's abuse, which led to an investigation and an arrest. Payton was convicted on 6 counts of sexual assault on a child and was sentenced to 7 years in prison.
Your first what the fuck?
Yeah. Remember those sacrifices I was talking about earlier? I was thinking about him.
Yes.
7 years. And then he got out early.
For good behavior.
So he only spent 5.
Oh my God. Okay.
You can also keep track of how many people fuck up in this story.
Jeez. That's a whole like a whole crew of it though. Okay.
Kimball married Larissa Minor in 1993 and the two moved to Spokane, Washington. Kimball got into the timber business and began some logging scams.
Oh.
He would swindle money from anyone who would give it to him. Larissa would later say, quote, it was not uncommon to have a process server on our porch every other week serving us papers. The couple divorced in 1997, but still maintained a relationship until December 1999. Larissa had alleged that Kimball had raped her at gunpoint. Naturally, Kimball said that he hadn't hurt her or threatened her and told police that Larissa was only trying to sway a custody dispute over their 2 sons. When Larissa failed a polygraph test, the police decided not to file charges.
Okay.
In 2000, Kimball went to prison in Montana for violating probation on a prior fraud charge. He spent a year in jail and was transferred to a halfway house. After being there for about a month, he stole money from the gas station he worked at and went on the run. Larissa told authorities that Kimball had broken into her home, kidnapped, and raped her.
Oh.
The Spokane police issued a warrant for Kimball's arrest. This time.
Okay.
Kimball made his way up to Alaska, where he went by his brother's name, Brett, and got engaged to another woman. He resumed his fraud business and wrote $25,000 worth in forged checks. I don't know if I said that right.
No, I think you did.
Okay. He was arrested and sent to a federal prison. It was during this time he managed to convince the Federal Bureau of Investigation that he had information on a fellow inmate and information on an unsolved murder of a federal prosecutor, Thomas Wales.
I'm sure he does.
Half true.
Oh, okay.
Kimball told the FBI that fellow inmate Arnold Flowers was planning to have a federal judge, a prosecutor, and a witness who had testified against him in his fraud case killed. With Kimball's assistance and an undercover agent, the FBI were able to record a conversation between Flowers and his girlfriend, making arrangement with others to have these people killed. They were both arrested in March of 2002 and charged with murder for hire, witness tampering, and attempted murder.
Wow.
Because he had become an informant for the FBI, he was never brought to trial for the kidnapping and assault charges.
Okay.
They were dropped.
Because he's helping.
Local law enforcement dropped the charges, but the FBI denies that they ever asked them to do that.
Okay.
So then, Scott Kimball told the FBI he knew of another inmate that had bragged about killing the prosecutor, Thomas Wales. Kimball said that Jeremiah Jones was the inmate who had bragged about the killing. While they investigated, they decided to transfer Kimball to a low-security prison called Inglewood in Littleton, Colorado, which is where I was.
Oh.
He also alluded to the fact he may have other information about other crimes he had overheard or talked to his fellow inmates about. They sent FBI agent Carl Schicklaff, who was the liaison to Inglewood, to hear Kimball's claims. Schicklaff, this is going to be great, was not too pleased to be given this job. He felt it was the work a rookie should be doing. Schicklaff wanted more from his job. He wanted to take down the mob and catch serial killers. Nonetheless, he listened and wrote down what Kimball had to say. Kimball told Schicklaff,
Don't start saying other ways.
Schicklaff. Okay.
That's not how you said it the first time.
What did I say?
Schicklaff.
Oh, it's definitely not Schlaff. It's definitely Schlaff. Well, it's Schlaff. Schlaff. Should I start it over?
No, we'll just go from this part.
Okay.
What are you going to call him now? Mackenzie thinks that she pronounced it wrong this whole time, and I'm not going to go back and have her change everything. So what's his name going to be going forward?
Schlaff.
Okay.
Because it's SCH.
Okay.
Okay. Schlaff. Nonetheless, he listened and wrote down what Kimball had to say. Kimball told Schlaff that his cellmate, Stephen Ennis, was planning to hire someone to kill witnesses that were going to testify against him. Schlaff did some investigating on Kimball's credibility. He wanted to know the type of person he was working with and if he had been convicted of any violent crimes. All Schlaff was able to find was the fraud charge in Alaska and Montana. He spoke to the FBI Special Agent Colton Seeley in Alaska, who had said that Kimball had been very helpful in the case against Flowers. Schlaff thought that he would be working with a petty con artist, not seeing any violent crimes because they were dropped.
Yeah.
He figured Kimball would be a good informant before a jury.
This is why charges shouldn't be dropped. Or if they are dropped, they should still be on your record to be like, he was charged with this. Like, it was dropped, but it's still there.
Mhm.
Like, he's still a violent person.
Mhm.
That's why I think I've mentioned this before, when court cases are like, or in a trial or whatever, they're like, well, we're not going to think about the other stuff that he's done, or we're not going to look at his
Why?
past things. Right. Because they're like, well, it's not fair. It's going to influence this. It's like,
Yes.
that's who he is.
Right.
That's important to this case. It shows you who he is. If you can have character witnesses, you should be able to see what their past charges were.
Hell yeah.
Ugh.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing that drives me crazy.
Well, it's about to get worse.
Good.
Schlaff took what Kimball told him about Ennis to the DEA and the U.S. Attorney's Office. Soon after, Kimball was reactivated as an informant for the FBI, and Agent Schlaff would be his handler. They were going to try to get evidence to charge Ennis with the murder for hire. So their plan, Kimball would tell Ennis that when he got out of prison, he, meaning Kimball, would kill the witness for Ennis. Once Ennis moved to carry out the murder plot, that's when the feds would charge him.
Okay.
Kimball reported to Schlaff that he told Ennis about his idea and said that Ennis believed it. And he also told Schlaff that Ennis's girlfriend would introduce Kimball to Ennis's drug dealing partner on the outside who would provide the gun.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. The witnesses were set to testify about Ennis's ecstasy distribution ring. So, like, big deal.
Yeah.
Kimball left Inglewood in December of 2002, and the FBI and DOJ convinced a judge to free Kimball on a $10,000 bond. He would appear in court for an eventual plea bargaining hearing, and this is where a judge would determine his sentence for the charges in Alaska.
Oh my God, okay.
Yeah. The judge ordered, this didn't happen in December of 2002. This was like March or earlier. The judge ordered Kimball to pay a $5,000 fine, restitution to the Wells Fargo Bank, and 3 months in prison. By this time, Kimball had time served and was put on probation for 3 years. The judge who sentenced Kimball had some reservations about Kimball being an informant. So this is an excerpt from the article. She, quote, characterized his attitude as duplicitous, paraphrasing it as, I'm happy to turn other people in, but I don't want to be held fully accountable for my own behavior.
Okay.
Taught my kids the saying, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Do they know what that means at all?
Nope. And at one point I was so frustrated that I looked at them and I said, you will figure it out as you get older, and then you will say, aha, she's right.
That's what Miss No meant.
So because of the terms of the plea agreement and the federal sentencing guidelines, she granted Kimball time served because you can't be on probation and be an informant for the FBI.
Interesting.
So she considered his probation time served.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that was a thing.
Neither did I until I read this. A Montana prosecutor wanted Kimball to face charges for his escape from the halfway house, but FBI blocked that and said they needed him free in order for them to help him.
Okay.
Him to help them.
Mm-hmm.
So Kimball moves in with his mother Barb and her partner Kay in Denver. He started flipping houses and set up an organic meat distributor. Schlaff gave Kimball a cell phone and an earpiece to record any conversations relevant to the Ennis Have I been saying Ennis or Ennis?
I can't remember. Ennis, I think. Look at it real quick, and what is your first thing that you would say?
Ennis.
Okay.
Yeah, Ennis. You're going to text me later and be like, no, that's not what you fucking said. Eventually, I'm going to go back to Enos. It's definitely not Enos. I definitely said Ennis because Enos sounds like penis.
Yeah, okay. I think it's definitely Ennis.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So while working as an informant for the FBI, Kimball received a total of $50,000.
You get paid being an informant?
You do.
So we just need to do like a crime and then become informants and then just never have to go to jail, get any charges that we did get like dropped and then get paid. Okay.
Yep.
Crime pays.
Literally.
Wow. That seems like that shouldn't be how that works.
Seems like a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm like, I get it. You probably need people who are on the inside.
You do. That's what an informant is.
Right. So I get that part.
But like,
but that much
that's
money?
a lot of money.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think we're at what the fuck number 3, 4? No, sorry. Even if they're not said out loud, they're definitely said in your head.
Oh yeah, they're thought.
So Kimball got in contact with Ennis's girlfriend, Jennifer Markham. Jennifer was 25 years old and from Illinois. She had dropped
Illinois.
Sorry.
Mackenzie.
Sorry.
That's like the second time you've said that.
Sorry. Illinois.
Thank you.
She had dropped out of high school and had been married and divorced.
Maybe she pronounces it Illinois too. Or
I
Illinois.
didn't say Nois. I said
Illinois.
noise.
Dropping out of high school. I'm just kidding.
She moved to Colorado with her 4-year-old son and worked as a fast food worker. But needing more money, she also took up dancing at Shotgun Willie's, which was a suburban strip club. Sclaff was not happy about the meetings that Kimball and Jennifer were having. But Kimball did start seeing Jennifer on his own accord. One point I read somewhere that he had even asked the Sclaff guy if he could have sex with her.
Sir!
And he was like, no.
No! You can't do that.
She's either a witness or a suspect, so no.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Gets better.
Men.
Oh, it gets, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Kimball had told Jennifer that he owned a chain of coffee shops in Seattle. Sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't own Starbucks.
Okay. I was going to say, the only coffee chain I can think of in Seattle.
Yeah, no. So Kimball told Jennifer that she could move to Washington and run one of the shops. Jennifer was desperate for a career change and even talked to Ennis about Kimball's offer.
I would actually love to run a coffee shop.
Ennis told Jennifer that she should trust his ex-cellmate. On February 17th, 2003, she had called Ennis and she said that she was going to go to Seattle for a couple days with Kimball so he could show her the ropes of the coffee shop. This was how their conversation went, meaning Ennis and Jennifer.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go back and forth. So it starts off with Ennis saying, "You okay?" Jennifer, "Yeah." "You all ready to go?" "Packing." "Are you? Cool. Are you excited?" "No, not really." "How come?" "I don't know." "You should be. You'll have a nice time." A little bit later, "You taking a cab out to the airport?" I'm not sure yet. I think I'm taking my car." "You're going to have fun up there." A little bit later, "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'll see you next Thursday." And then that was it. That was the only part that was put in the article. Jennifer moved all her furniture from Colorado Springs to Kimball's condo in Lakewood the day before, so also on the 17th. And they were planning to leave on the 18th. Kimball had worn a wire for the FBI to try and get information from Jennifer. Jennifer never solicited Kimball to kill anyone, but she did describe one member of Ennis's drug ring as a scumbag who deserves to die. But that was about it.
Yeah, I feel like that can't be anything.
No, it's not.
We just talked about human sacrifices, so.
So, on March 27th, 2003, Jennifer's 1996 Saturn had been sitting in the Denver International Airport parking garage for 37 days when the police had impounded it. They went to Colorado Springs, and her son's father, so at the time she was living with her son's father, but they weren't together.
Okay.
Her son's father and told police he told police that he hadn't seen Jennifer since February 16th. Ennis didn't hear from her either. He tried contacting her, but the calls went straight to voicemail, and his letters went unanswered. Kimball would later tell Sclaff that Jennifer had called him to say that she had flown to New York, where she used to dance and worked as a call girl.
So she flew to New York instead of Washington? Okay.
So, April 2003, FBI thought Jennifer was in New York based on the information Kimball told them.
Right.
We're going to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to it later.
Okay.
Lori McLeod met Scott Kimball at a casino in Blackhawk, Colorado in early 2003.
Wait, what's her name?
Lori McLeod.
Oh.
Lori was a hairdresser who had already been married and divorced twice. She didn't date much. She focused most of her attention on her daughter, Casey. Casey was 19 years old and was a recovering addict. She had recently gotten clean from using meth and was starting to turn her life around. She had a part-time job at Subway and she was making new friends. Kimball and Lori met while they were playing a game of cards. Barb, Kimball's mother, and her partner Kay were also at the table. Kimball told Lori that he was an FBI agent and introduced Kay as his mother's sister. Was not her sister.
Right.
Neither Barb nor Kay made any effort to correct him on anything. And they knew he did not work for the FBI as an agent. The two exchanged numbers and went on their first date on Valentine's Day. That would be 2 days before Jennifer last spoke with her boyfriend, Steve Ennis, or saw her son, 3 days before she moved all her furniture into Kimball's place, and 4 days before she left for Seattle.
Right.
On their first date, Kimball told Lori, "I don't want there to be any lies between us, so I need to tell you something."
That's not something you want to hear.
He clarified that Kay was actually his mother's wife, not his aunt.
Oh.
That was it.
Oh. Yeah, the big secret you don't want to keep in your relationship.
To Lori, Kimball seemed like a good man who had his life together. Lori did get some strange vibe from Kimball towards her daughter, Casey.
Ew.
She thought Kimball was maybe checking her out, but she
Ew.
tried to ignore it.
No, that's not something you ignore. That's something you're like, okay, you know what? Not going to work out. I'm sorry.
Telling you. At one point, he had shown Lori his FBI badge and a laptop with the Bureau seal. She would later discover that both of these items were fake.
Yeah, I'm sure you can buy that online somewhere.
He traveled a lot for work and told Lori that for her safety, he couldn't tell her where he was going. All he told her was that he was working on a major case about a girl named Jennifer who might have been murdered.
Okay.
So, early March of 2003, Kimball had to go to Alaska for the fraud charges. Lori had no idea.
That he was going to Alaska?
She knew he was traveling. She had no idea where he was going, and she had no idea why.
Because she thinks he's on like a mission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a freaking clue.
Oh, God.
So, obviously didn't know the reason behind his travels and certainly didn't know he was going to court. After Alaska, he flew to Seattle to meet Jeremiah Jones. Remember, this was the man who Kimball said bragged about killing the federal prosecutor. The FBI set up Kimball with a wire and talking points before his meeting with Jones. According to one FBI agent, Kimball didn't use any of the talking points, and it sounded like Jones hardly knew Kimball.
I feel like I'd be too bad at wearing a wire. Like, I already get self-conscious about how my conversations sound sometimes, and I'd be like, oh my God, they're going to think this conversation's going so badly. Like, we're being very awkward. The conversation's not flowing.
They wouldn't be able to hear it because my heartbeat would be so fucking loud.
Like, what is that thumping noise in the background?
Not be hearing anything else.
Or you're breathing where you're just like, oh my God.
I am telling you, I can't lie. I can't keep secrets.
No, you cannot.
Because if I don't say it outright, I say it with my face.
Yeah.
And anytime I'm nervous, sad, mad, whatever, any other emotion besides calm, everything is red. My face is red. My neck is red. My chest is red. Everything.
Just a dead giveaway.
It's red. Like right now, I can feel the heat on my cheeks. But I'm not hot. Although.
But you are hot.
Oh, yeah. And it also didn't seem like they had the type of relationship where Jones would talk about committing a high-profile killing.
Right. I feel like you'd have to be pretty close with someone for that to be a conversation.
The Seattle agents were furious. They even told Sclaff that Kimball was untrustworthy. This then angered Sclaff because the agent had written it in an email.
And had written what in an email?
That about Kimball being untrustworthy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that email could be used against Kimball in court should he ever have to testify.
Oh.
And so I was like, okay, even though they were right, I get it.
Right. I can see the frustration.
Sclaff, of course, stood by Kimball's legitimacy. No.
Legitimacy?
Yeah, I can say that word.
Yeah.
Legitimacy. There we go.
There you go.
Sclaff stood by Kimball's legitimacy, saying he met his girlfriend, his 2 sons. Oh, I didn't realize I didn't put that in there. With his first wife, 2 kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. And she also moved back to Colorado. And so even though she was afraid of him, she had to let her sons go see him.
Ew.
More on that later. So saying he met his girlfriend, his 2 sons, his mother, and even while he was renovating one of his houses. Schlaff was so confident in Kimball that when they next met, he did not bring up any of the Seattle drama. Schlaff was taking Kimball to meet Jason Price, Stephen Ennis's partner. Schlaff asked Kimball if he had heard from Jennifer since her trip to New York. Kimball told Schlaff, "I hear she's dead." Schlaff was shocked to hear this information. He tried to ask Kimball for more details, but Kimball said he didn't know anything. The meeting with Jason also was a flop. Jason talked about the witnesses set to testify, but didn't suggest any violence to stop them. When Schlaff told the U.S. Attorney's office, he learned that they had also put a hold on Ennis's case. FBI documents cited, quote, trouble gaining cooperation with the U.S. Attorney's office of using Kimball as a cooperating witness.
Wow.
In late May, Kimball was going to fly to Anchorage to consult on the trial of Arnold Flowers, the only legitimate thing that he has snitched on. Like, when Schlaff gave him a ride to the airport, Kimball seemed nervous and almost paranoid. Kimball even asked Schlaff if anything was wrong.
They seem to be, like, oddly close. Uh-huh.
At one point, I think it was during this moment, the person who was writing the article, because he, like, actually went back and interviewed these people. And, like, he was like, yeah, he was playing country music, something they both liked. And I was like, I was watching, there's this thing on Amazon Prime called, like, The Worst Killers Ever.
Mm-hmm.
I made myself stop watching it because I'm like, you're going to run out of people. You're going to hear about all of them.
Right.
And it was some lady who I guess had done, I don't know if it was like interviews with whoever it was, but she like called them by their first name. Like whatever their name was, like if it was like Robert, she was like, yeah, and Bob, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wow, you are awfully buddy-buddy with him.
Right.
Because like here, I don't know if you noticed, little symbolism or whatever you want to call it. But when I was talking about Kimball as a kid, when he was a victim, I said Scott.
Scott.
And all the other victims I always call by their first name.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. When Schlaff returned to his office, he checked to see if Kimball had any outstanding warrants, which he did, in Spokane, Washington. Dun, dun, dun. Schlaff had it with the whole thing. When Kimball returned to Denver, Schlaff had Kimball arrested.
Oh.
Schlaff learned later that the warrant was for a minor probation violation. So still nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Schlaff visited Kimball at the jail to inform him that he was no longer going to be an informant for the FBI.
Right.
Wanting to keep his unofficial job, Kimball gave Schlaff information that would make him rethink the deactivation.
Oh, God.
Kimball told Schlaff that Jason Price had confessed to him that he had strangled Jennifer Markham to death.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Schlaff notified the DEA, and 2 agents came out to talk with Kimball. Kimball told them that Price had shown him a photograph on a laptop of Jennifer's body, naked, bound, and gagged. He said that Price had strangled Jennifer and put her in the trunk of his car before driving to Rifle, Colorado, where he left Jennifer's body at the bottom of a creek. Kimball said that Price later asked him to go to the body and cut out Jennifer's breast implants for fear that they could be traced.
The body that's at the bottom of the lake.
Creek.
Right. Okay.
The DEA did not buy Kimball's story.
No.
The lead agent, Susan Halanen, told law enforcement officials that after the interview, quote, he's a fucking liar. Of course, it's a woman coming in.
They always call it.
Nah, man. Halanen thought that Kimball was the one who killed Jennifer.
Yeah.
But couldn't provide a possible motive as to why he would kill her, which is fair. Kimball was asked to take a polygraph test, which later showed that he was not lying.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, those aren't the best.
No. Much argument between the DEA and FBI ensued, trying to determine if Kimball should, 1, be an informant, and 2, be released from jail. The FBI won this round, and the judge dropped the arrest in Washington, and in June of 2003, Kimball was released from jail. He told Lori that it had been a ruse as part of his FBI cover. Yes.
Okay.
So, August 2003, Casey McLeod didn't show up for a shift at Subway. This is Lori's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
After 2 days gone by with no answer on her phone, Lori began to worry about her daughter. Kimball was away on a hunting trip during this time, and when he got back, he consoled his girlfriend and told her that he would use his resources at the FBI to help search for Casey.
Oh my God. These are such big eye rolls.
I forgot to put this part in there, but at one point, he brought a necklace and a makeup thing. It was like, see, look, she left this stuff, she'll come back.
Okay.
Lori tried to file a missing persons report, but the police wouldn't let her because Casey was over 18 and, quote, adults were allowed to go missing if they wanted to.
See, that's so stupid.
I know. Kimball seemed to agree with the police and tried to reassure Lori that Casey had run away before and she would come home when she was ready. Casey's boyfriend said that Kimball had picked up Casey from the motel that they were staying at and even paid for the room. Kimball, of course, denied all of this.
Of course.
And said that Casey's boyfriend was on drugs.
Mm.
To try and help Lori move on, Kimball suggested that they get married. They went to the drive-thru chapel in Vegas, and when they returned, Kimball's mother told Lori, "We need to protect each other." Barb Kimball was an insurance agent and helped Lori take out a life insurance policy with Scott as the sole beneficiary.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's not as predictable as you think it's going to be.
Oh, okay.
Kimball had already taken the same type of policy out for his 2 sons.
It doesn't sound promising.
No. In December, Kimball went back to Alaska to receive his sentencing.
That would be such a pain.
Well, don't do the crime if you can't do the time.
No, right. But still, just like, hey, I have to go to Alaska again now for my sentencing.
Right. But despite the FBI's efforts to convince a judge of his usefulness, the judge gave him 3 years probation, which caused his life as an informant to end.
Okay.
He can't be an informant and on probation.
Right.
With little progress on the
Can you be an informant after probation? Like, is that a thing? Well, I guess
I'm going to assume so because...
I'm going to assume because they're criminals who are...
Right.
Okay.
I thought, it's okay. I thought the exact same thing as I was writing this.
Right.
And I was like, well, duh.
Right. You get so like caught up in like the, okay, probation part. And then you're like, wait, the whole point of them is...
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
With little progress on the Ennis case or Jennifer Markham's disappearance, Schlaff and Kimball lost touch. We're going to fast forward a little bit to July 2004. Lori and Kimball were at home with Kimball's 2 sons. They were working in the backyard when just after 9 p.m., Cody came inside to ask Lori if there were any flashlights.
And how old are the sons?
I don't know how old Cody is, but Justin's 10.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if Cody is older or younger.
Okay.
They were trapping mice, which I'm like, hello.
Come to my house.
And it was getting dark. A few moments later, Cody comes running back and yelled, "Dad said to call 911. Justin has been hurt. Call 911.
And Justin's the brother?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
As Lori went to call 911, Kimball came in carrying his 10-year-old son, Justin, who was screaming about his back. Before Lori could finish telling the operator what happened, Kimball was in his car driving Justin to the hospital. Lori and Cody followed not far behind them. When they got to the hospital, Justin was on a gurney, convulsing and vomiting, and blood smeared all around him.
Oh my God.
When Lori asked the nurse what happened, she said the fall was really hard on his little body. Lori was confused, as you are, and she told the nurse that he didn't fall. He was injured at the house, not in a car. Then Kimball entered the conversation and told Lori that while he was playing with the boys outside, a metal grate had fallen on Justin. When they were driving to the hospital, Justin felt the large wound on his head, and he went to go roll down the window to throw up and accidentally opened the car door, which sent him falling out onto the road.
Wait, but they were following close behind.
Not that close.
But how far away that you wouldn't see your son fall out of the car?
All I know is that he left first.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think by the time like Lori got it together, and I mean, he said he was going like 60 miles an hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Kimball said he was going 60 miles an hour and he didn't think Justin was going to make it. Thankfully, Justin did make it.
Oh my God.
And after 2 weeks in a medically induced coma, his first words were, "Why did Dad do this to me?"
Oh.
Justin said that Kimball had pushed the metal grate onto him in the backyard. He also said that while they were in the car, Kimball had opened the passenger side door and pushed Justin out.
Oh my God.
When law enforcement...
Never once did I think he opened the door on his own.
No.
Right.
Absolutely not. When law enforcement looked into the matter, Justin's neurosurgeon said his injuries were affecting his memory.
How do we have a neurosurgeon in on this?
I don't know. The article also said that the neurosurgeon was consoling Kimball from the accusations. So fuck this neurosurgeon.
Something sounds fishy with the neurosurgeon. Maybe the neurosurgeon got a little bit of a pay raise for saying these things.
Well, also, they just went to one doctor.
Right.
Nothing else.
I mean, it's probably not hard to convince one doctor to lie for you.
Right.
Yeah.
No, law enforcement only asked one doctor.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And it was the kid against Kimball.
Right.
And then to complicate things further, the great incident happened in one jurisdiction and the car
Oh my
in
God.
another.
That is the stupidest thing. The jurisdiction thing is so stupid.
The whole thing was bullshit. And I even read somewhere that, like, even later on, his son was like, no, this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you remember, Cody came in for the flashlights. My theory is when he came in for the flashlights, Dad went on his plan
Oh,
to
absolutely.
kill his son to get his life insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
Money, whatever.
Yeah.
Justin's biological mom, Larissa, obviously was very angry with police. She had tried in vain to strip Kimball of his rights as a parent, but she would never win full custody. So
Of
even
course not.
after Justin's accident, she had to send the boys to their dads every other weekend.
I would try to make it an argument that all of this stuff happened under his supervision, so maybe he's not the best person to have supervision.
We have to back up just a smidge.
Okay.
Because while Justin was in the hospital, by the way, I can't remember if I said this. Did I say he was in a coma for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Kimball's Uncle Terry came from Alabama to help take care of Cody. Uncle Terry was a Navy vet who worked various jobs out west before settling in the South. When Terry arrived at Kimball's, he had with him a tractor trailer, 2 dogs, and a briefcase with thousands of dollars he had withdrawn from his savings after his divorce. According to Lori, he was socially awkward and a terrible house guest. He was always drinking and would even walk around naked.
Okay.
Apple tree. Even though it's a further branch. One day, Lori came home from work to find the furniture had been rearranged. She found Kimball in the backyard with the white leather sofa that had a large stain of some kind. What the hell happened to the couch? McLeod asked. One of Terry's dogs threw up on it, Kimball said. That is not dog vomit, McLeod replied.
Mm-hmm.
Kimball suggested that maybe it was Terry who vomited and blamed the dog. Either way, Kimball told Lori that Terry was gone and wasn't coming back. He won a small prize in the lottery and left for Mexico with a stripper.
Yeah, okay, very believable.
Lori couldn't possibly see how any woman would be attracted to him, no matter how much money he had.
Yeah.
But she didn't ask any more questions. She was glad to have him gone. Okay, so we're going to do a quick overview of the rest of 2004 and 2005.
Okay.
The fathers of Jennifer Markham and Casey McLeod began their own investigation into their daughter's disappearances due to lack of interest from law enforcement. A friend of Casey's told her father about a connection between Casey and Kimball. She said that Kimball had also gone missing at the same time that Casey did. Mr. McLeod began looking into Scott Kimball and stumbled across the disappearance of Jennifer Markham. He reached out to her family, and the two families came together to compare information. The families went to various locations to try to find clues as to what might have happened. Lori told them all she knew about Kimball, and the families soon discovered Uncle Terry's suspicious disappearance in September of 2004. They put together all the information they had found and had a clear picture of the connection to Kimball and these 3 missing people. Rob McLeod and Bob Markham. I love the fact that maybe they're both named Robert and one goes by Rob and one is Bob.
Rob and Bob.
Rob and Bob. Shared the information with the FBI, and after some convincing, the FBI finally took their information and allegations seriously.
Wow, finally.
Before we get to the rest of the investigation, we have to go forward a smidge. January 2006. Gary Thatcher, a detective from the Lafayette, Colorado Police Department, he went to Kimball and McLeod's home looking for Kimball. Earlier in January, a bank manager had reported that someone had forged $83,000 in checks.
Oh.
Thatcher was responsible for investigating fraud claims and learned that the money had been deposited into account for Rocky Mountain All Natural Beef Company, the organic meat distribution company that Kimball still owned. The bank video showed a large man with a goatee depositing the checks. Thatcher also met with an optometrist named Cleve Armstrong. His checks had been the ones that had been stolen, and Armstrong worked in the same office building as Kimball's beef distribution and Barb Kimball's insurance business.
Convenient.
Mm-hmm. When Thatcher went to interview Barb's employees, he discovered some of Armstrong's mail on Kimball's desk. The more that Thatcher investigated, the more people he discovered that Kimball stole money from. He stole from his business partner and even his own mother.
Of course.
When Thatcher asked Lori where her husband was, she responded with, "Well, he didn't come home last night, so your guess is as good as mine." As the years had passed, Kimball stayed out more and helped look for Casey less. Lori told Thatcher he might have a girlfriend in California where he'd been spending a lot of time lately. Lori agreed to go to the police station with Thatcher where she had learned the truth about her husband. She seemed unsurprised by what the detective was telling her. Kimball called while she was with Thatcher, and Lori put her on speaker for the detective to hear. Kimball was asking her if the police had come to talk to her because they had reached out to his mom. The conversation was short, and Thatcher noticed how easily Lori could lie to her husband. Thatcher asked Lori about Kimball's work. He was referring to the meat distribution, but Lori told him that he worked for the FBI. Lori told him about the badge and the working undercover and how she saw Kimball receive envelopes of cash from other FBI agents. To which Thatcher replied, "Guys who work with the FBI don't steal checks from their mom." Mic drop. Lori also told Thatcher about Casey, who had been missing for over 2 years at this point. She told him that Kimball was among one of the last people to see her, and she had suspected that he knew more than he was saying. Thatcher continued to investigate and discovered the investigation against Kimball for the attempted murder of his son. In March of 2006, he contacted the FBI to let them know that Kimball may be impersonating an agent. They put him in contact with Sclaff, who told Thatcher that Kimball was an informant for the FBI. Thatcher explained the case he was investigating, and Sclaff was also not surprised by the information. The fraud case.
Oh, okay.
This is when Thatcher also learned about the disappearance of Jennifer Markham.
Mm-hmm.
Thatcher asked Sclaff, "Are you aware of Casey disappearing?" He was, but he didn't know any other details. Thatcher goes on to say, "Are you aware that Scott was the last person to see her alive? He disappeared for a couple days around that time period. And there was a couple of articles I read that said that Sclaff couldn't get in contact with him." Sclaff had been so caught up in his own case, he didn't pay much attention to the others. Sclaff replied to Thatcher, "Shit, Gary, I did not know that. I'm sorry. You were the first one to tell me." He was silent for a moment before he said, "Well, Gary, you might have a serial killer on your hands." Moron. Thatcher joined forces with FBI agent Johnny Grusing, who seemed to be the one in charge of cleaning up the huge blunder on the part of the FBI. They didn't have enough evidence to charge Kimball with any of the murders, and they didn't even have evidence that anyone had been murdered. At this point, all they could do was arrest him on a probation violation after his brother told police about the guns Kimball had given him. This is a violation of his probation because he wasn't legally allowed to purchase guns.
Right.
After trying to escape the police and FBI in California for 3 hours, he finally surrendered. He went to Colorado briefly for an arraignment on charges there, like the gun charges, and then back to Montana for his absconding from the halfway house years ago.
Oh my God.
That was never prosecuted.
Right.
This gave Thatcher and Grusing time to build their case against him. So 2 important conversations took place during this investigation. Number 1, in November of 2006. They spoke with the parents of Jennifer Markham. They had met with Kimball in August of 2005, and during that meeting, Kimball told Jennifer's parents he knew exactly where her body was buried and he could take them to the location in the mountains. He told her parents she was in Rifle, Colorado. Kimball had told Jennifer's parents that he wanted them to have a good Christian burial. Smartly, the Markhams said no to Kimball's offer. Jennifer's father later told ABC News, quote, "I figured he was a killer and I wasn't going anywhere with him. I figured I'd end up dead after the things that he said."
Smart man.
Second conversation, in January of 2007, Thatcher and Grusing went to Montana to interview a former cellmate of Kimball's, Brett Gamblin. According to him, when he was working with Kimball in the beef business, the two were hanging out and drinking when Kimball asked him, "Are fake titties traceable?"
Oh. Oh my God.
This guy sounded like a fucking moron, and I feel like that makes it all the more embarrassing that he tricked all these people.
Oh my God.
Gamblin informed him that they were,
Yeah.
and Kimball became concerned. He supposedly said, "I know a guy that will pay you to cut implants out of a dead body." Gamblin was confused and asked why he seemed so concerned about implants when they could identify someone from fingerprints, teeth, and the skull.
Yeah.
To which Kimball replied, "You cut off the feet, head, and hands, and there's no trace of it." Back in Colorado, Lori McLeod had been evicted from her home after her husband had been arrested. She collected his belongings that were left and threw them into some boxes. As she was going through his stuff, she found a handwritten note from her daughter the week she went missing that had her work schedule from Subway on it. Lori was confused as to how Kimball got it and why he had kept it. Lori began to work closely with authorities. She gave them Kimball's laptop, and investigators discovered hundreds of images and videos of women being tortured, maimed, and held at gunpoint.
Oh.
Like rape pornography.
Right.
Yeah. They also found that Kimball had read a lot of news stories about BTK because that was happening at the time.
Right. In Wichita.
Yeah. Among the disturbing images was one of a woman who was smiling and healthy. None of Kimball's friends or family knew who she was. Now, I have differing reports of this supposed photo. One report said it was harmless. The other one said it was very gruesome and like terrible.
The smiling picture?
Yeah. So like one report said that it was like the other ones, but it hadn't been downloaded from the internet.
Okay.
And so it was like clearly a real person that this was happening to that he had photos of. And then the one other article was like, no, she was smiling and happy.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah. Maybe there was more than one photo. I'm not really sure. Regardless, this was a photo of a young woman that nobody knew. So, pause, because in early 2003, Kimball told Schlaff about another inmate, Steve Hawley, was planning an escape. This got Hawley thrown into solitary confinement, which meant that he now had no ways to communicate with his girlfriend, Leanne Emery. So we need to rewind one more time to January of 2003. Leanne Emery received a call from Scott Kimball in December of 2002. Around the same time, he had contacted Jennifer Markham. Leanne's boyfriend, Steve Hawley, had told her to trust Kimball because they had actually planned to break Steve out of jail. So that actually was legitimate, but he just left out the part that he helped.
Yeah.
Shortly after this, Steve was thrown in solitary confinement and Leanne was no longer able to contact him. Unfortunately, Leanne came to rely on Kimball and even joined him in his scams. She had told her cousin in an email that Kimball was, quote, dangerous. But if you don't fuck with him, he's your best friend.
Yeah, those are good friends to have.
About a week later, Leanne told her parents that she was going to Mexico on a caving trip. As sketchy as this sounds to us, this was completely normal for Leanne.
Oh, I was going to say, okay, Mexico. Okay, caving trip.
Right.
Okay.
She had taken up this hobby for quite some time now, and her parents saw it as a hopeful sign that Leanne was moving on to better things in her life. She had a rough first marriage, and caving was one of her favorite pastimes.
Okay.
11 days after leaving home, Leanne had called her parents for what would be the last time. She told them that she was going to stay in Mexico a little bit longer. At this point, her parents already knew that she hadn't been in Mexico at all. According to her credit card charges, she had been through Colorado, Wyoming, Oregon, Washington, and Nevada.
Okay.
Presumably forging and stealing checks with Kimball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The call from Leanne came from Colorado, and she also mailed a gift certificate to her sister from the same location.
Ugh, idiot.
2 weeks after Leanne had gone on her trip, her parents received a call from Moab, Utah. A sheriff's deputy called them to report that her car had been abandoned along a dirt road near Book Cliffs. Her parents tried to report her missing to Arapahoe County, Colorado, and police told them Leanne likely ran away and there was nothing to indicate foul play, so there was nothing they could do.
Right, and she's over 18, so...
Her parents learned of her abandoned car, and the only thing that was found was her purse and some other belongings. However, all of her credit cards were gone. They got some hope when one of her cards had been used in California. It was later discovered, though, that a sex worker had used the card after a man had given it to her as payment for her services.
Let me give you a whole credit card.
I know.
Okay.
Her parents also discovered some emails between Leanne and her cousin. In one of those emails, she wrote, quote, "I have to hide. My orders come from Hannibal." That's what she called Kimball.
Ew.
I don't think she ever knew his, like, actual name. I think she only knew him as Hannibal.
I would hate that name.
And he's a dangerous person. In another email, she wrote, "I'm in an underground world." And then she also wrote, "If Hannibal knew I was talking to you, he'd have me killed in a second. Plus, he'd have you killed too." Sadly, local law enforcement and the FBI were not interested in opening an investigation into Leanne's disappearance, and it wouldn't be until 2007 that Leanne's parents heard from any investigator about their daughter. Okay, we're officially caught up. So, quick recap. We got 4 people that have disappeared within a year and a half who all have connections.
Oh my God, that was only a year and a half that they disappeared in? Okay.
Leanne and Jennifer disappeared within a month of each other in 2003, Casey in August of that year, and Uncle Terry in September of 2004.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there was also the attempted murder on Justin, Kimball's 10-year-old son, in July of 2004.
Right.
So this is where everything starts to get connected. No more rewinds, I promise. Okay, so after they found the photo on Kimball's computer and discovered that Leanne had been missing for 5 years, they got in contact with her old boyfriend, Steve Hawley. He told Thatcher and Grusing of the escape plan he and Kimball had devised together while Kimball was locked up. When Hawley learned of Leanne's disappearance, he was sure that Kimball had killed her. Hawley positively identified the photo on Kimball's computer as Leanne, except when he last saw her, she had blonde hair, unlike the photo which showed her with short brown hair. Investigators were able to put together a more precise picture of Kimball and Leanne's movements prior to her disappearance. So they were in the Denver area from January 1st to the 16th in 2003. And in the states of Oregon and Washington from January 17th to 19th in 2003. They used using motel receipts, phone records, credit card receipts, and check records. Grusing also discovered that Leanne had purchased Kimball's laptop for him at a Best Buy in Lakewood, Colorado on January 10th, 2003 for $1,684.73 using her bank debit card.
Mm-hmm.
The same method of investigation placed them together in Wyoming from January 24th to the 25th in 2003. According to statements from Heather, Leanne's cousin, given to the FBI, Leanne called her from the hotel she was staying at, the one where she was last seen. The women chatted for about 2 hours. Leanne talked about Hawley, whom she still couldn't reach. She didn't know he was in solitary.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about the dangers of stripping at private parties and some crooked cops she claimed to be hanging around with. She said, quote, "If Kimball comes back, I've got to hang up." Leanne explained at one point, "If he knew I was talking to you, he'd kill you and me." Heather asked, "Are you safe?" She said, "Pretty safe." Leanne said she couldn't tell her cousin what she was doing or where she was, and Heather was reluctant to pry. Leanne began to cry, saying this might be the last time they ever talked. "If you don't hear from me, know that I love you." She had also said this to her sister. I think it was like right before she was supposed to leave for Mexico, or like maybe it was when she was extending her stay.
Mm-hmm.
She had said the same thing to her sister.
Okay.
"I just want you to know I love you." And then she said, "I've got to go." That was the last time the two would ever speak to each other. Detective Thatcher found a receipt from one of the boxes given to him by Lori McLeod. It showed that Kimball had been in Walden, Colorado the day after Casey disappeared. It was a small town in a vastly wooded area of the state. He told the Forest Service he was investigating a homicide, and they informed him that they had recently found a skull that belonged to a young woman. DNA would confirm that it belonged to Casey McLeod.
Mm.
They got him. So, this is from an article written by Atavist magazine. This is where I got a lot of the information. The author summed up the final parts of this case very well, so I'm just going to use what he said. He said, Colorado law penalizes so-called habitual criminals. With new evidence about his many financial scams, including the forged checks he deposited into the account of his meat business, prosecutors were prepared to charge Kimball as a serial con man. For that, he faced 48 years in prison.
Wow.
The state offered him a deal, plead guilty to the fraud charges, and lead investigators to the bodies of all his murder victims. If the remains were recovered and Kimball pled guilty to the killings, he'd do no additional time for them. If Kimball rejected the deal, investigators would continue looking for the bodies while he was locked up as a habitual criminal, so quite some time.
Wait. So if he leads them to the bodies and they find the bodies, he's still only potentially going to jail for 48 years? Okay.
Once Grusing and Thatcher had proof that he had committed the murder, they warned Kimball that he could face the death penalty because he was committing other crimes when these happened. Obviously, he took the deal. The remains of Leanne Emery were found on Wednesday, March 11th, 2009, in the Book Cliffs region of southwest Utah, where her car was.
Right.
On Monday, June 29th, 2009, remains believed to be those of Terry Kimball were found in a remote area of Vail Pass. A year earlier, on Tuesday, September 30th, 2008, a hunter had discovered the skull and other bones in the remote area of northwest Colorado. The FBI subsequently confirmed that the skull and the bones were those of Casey McLeod. Markham's remains have not been found, even though Lori McLeod told FBI agents that Kimball told her that Markham's remains were near Rifle, Colorado. After being sentenced in 2008 to 53 years in prison on theft and a number of other charges, Kimball was also sentenced on Thursday, October 8th, 2009 to additional 70 years in prison for his guilty pleas of second-degree murder and because he couldn't produce all the bodies. So, we're not done.
Oh, don't worry. I didn't think we were.
Okay. In 2017, Kimball was charged with attempting to escape. He pled guilty to that case in 2020. CBS 4 discovered that Kimball had been moved from the Colorado Department of Corrections. So, okay, let me rewind a second. So when he got caught with the escape attempt, and I think there was like an attempted murder charge too or something like that.
Okay.
He got put into a higher security prison and he was like in solitary for like 20 hours a day.
Oh, geez.
Okay. So that's where he's being moved from.
Okay.
So he's being moved from the Colorado Department of Corrections to a high-security federal prison in Coleman, Florida. There wasn't any record of Kimball ever being in the Colorado prison. His release date says January 7th, 2082 on the USP Coleman website. Then no one said to why. All the FBI would say, or not the FBI, the corrections place would say is like, yeah, he's been moved. That's it. No idea why.
That's weird.
Yeah. So, a couple other wild, like, what the fuck?
To add to your what the fuck count.
Mm-hmm. So, while the case was going on, Kimball had given his cousin and his attorney these papers.
And he's in jail at this point, like when he gave the papers?
Mhm.
Okay.
Apparently, they were FBI 302s.
What's that?
Some sort of investigation document.
Okay.
And it was going on about how they were investigating him and how he and Ennis had run this like rape pornography ring.
So these are like papers that the FBI gave him.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, this is what Kimball gave to his attorney.
Right.
From the FBI.
From the FBI. Like the FBI gave it to him. He's giving it to his attorney.
So.
Is what we're to think.
Yes.
Okay.
So Kimball's whole thing is like, they're investigating me. They're trying to pin this on me.
Right.
They're trying to do this, that, and the other.
Okay.
Not his fault. So when his cousin brought these to the FBI, they told him that the papers were fake and Kimball had forged them.
There we go.
I was like, damn.
Like, did he really think that was not going to be easily found out?
I think this guy had way more faith in his cousin because at one point, like when, I don't know if it was when he pled guilty on the gun charges or something, he like said he wanted to turn his life around.
Well, they always do.
And he was like, his cousin even said something about he thought he found Jesus.
Oh.
So I'll end you with this. Like everyone else in his life, Coate later wrote in SLK, his book depicting the events for Scott Lee Kimball.
Kimball. Okay.
We were conned by him. Yes, you were, you dumbass.
Yeah.
And so that is the wild fucking story of a serial killer who was an informant for the FBI. They also think that he is responsible for a lot more than just those 4.
Oh, I would absolutely believe that.
Everyone, like his ex-wife, everybody was saying that there were multiple times where no one knew where he was.
Right.
And so there was one, I forget where it was, but they had discovered remains, and I guess the way it was disposed of or something like that, they thought it was Kimball, but they couldn't make any official connection. And for those of you who are dedicated listeners, those of you who are not, you should go back and check out our New Mexico episode because they think he may be responsible for the West Mesa murders.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And no one knows why he's now been moved to this federal prison.
And we probably will never know.
Yeah.
Wow. Again, another person who it's like, how did I not know about him?
Oh my God. There's so many.
There really are.
Like even the podcasts I listen to with like the serial killers.
Yeah.
They talk about people from all over the world. I mean, predominantly the United States, but all over. And they've talked about the main ones, but I realize I'm like, I could probably count on both hands the ones that I know off the top of my head. There are hundreds.
Right. And that's what's I like at least about our podcast is we find these things because we're looking specifically in a state.
Yep.
So we're not like, oh, here are all the big ones. Let's cover those. Where what is in this state? interesting. Here's a person who, may not be super prolific,
Yep.
but because we're doing this state, we're going to cover him.
Well, and because I was like, oh my God, he was an FBI informant and he was a serial killer at the same time, essentially.
Like what?
So that's got to be well known, which is why I asked you.
Yeah.
And then I found one podcast, which was also a YouTube video.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there was tons of articles and things like that, but that was it.
Right. Were there newspaper articles?
Oh, I'm sure. I just didn't look at those because I had enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, don't go down that rabbit hole.
Oh, God. Wow.
Yeah. And when I was looking for something to do, they did have something with Ted Bundy having been, something had happened with him in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, I guess I can't do that.
Yeah, no.
So I was shocked that you hadn't heard of this guy and that there was no major podcast or whatever that talked about him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a wild ride.
And it was interesting because as I read it when he was considered for the West Mesa murders, I'm like, oh, yeah. I remember giving like a list of possibilities and he was one of them.
How fun. Well, not fun, but what a cool connection.
Mm-hmm. So that is Scott Lee Kimball.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck?
Right? Hi.
Nicely done.
Thank you. So, what you talking about, Willis?
All right, so I'm just going to jump right into it.
As one should.
It was October 17th, 1941. A 73-year-old man named Philip Peters walked down into the kitchen of his home on 3335 Moncrief Place in Denver, Colorado, a place where he and his wife had lived for over 3 decades. But he was living alone at the time. His wife and childhood sweetheart Helen had recently fallen and broken her hip.
Oh, no.
She was recovering at the St. Anthony's Hospital. So she's at the hospital, he's at home. On this night, in his darkening kitchen, Peters was shocked to see a tall, gaunt, and disheveled man rummaging through his refrigerator.
Oh.
Completely shocked, Peter reacted quickly and used his walking cane to strike this unknown man. But unfortunately, Peters was unprepared when that man used an old pistol that had been found in the house to club him. The hit was so hard that the pistol actually broke apart. But that didn't stop the man, who then struck Peters again and again and again with a heavy iron stove shaker, eventually beating Peters to death. The man ran away and climbed back up into an attic cubbyhole in Peters' house, a cubbyhole that he had been living in for the past 5 weeks.
What?
Peters was well liked in the neighborhood, and it was well known that his wife was in the hospital, and that day after day, Peters would go visit her. His neighbors, the Ross family, were close with the Peters family and had been inviting Peters over for dinner while his wife was in the hospital so that he wouldn't have to have dinner time alone, and so that he could take leftovers home for his lunch the next day. Well, that same day, the Ross family grew very concerned when Peters didn't show up for dinner, like he had every single night since they started inviting him over. When he didn't show up, Jenny Ross decided to head over to Peters' house to check on him. She knocked on the door but received no answer. She then peered in and grew even more concerned when she saw Peters' cane and hat in the hallway still, meaning that he hadn't left the house yet. Growing even more worried, Ross called another one of her neighbors, Doris Burke, to come over and help her see if they could get in to check on Peters. Burke was actually able to climb over the screened-in back porch that Peters had and unlock the door. She entered the home and walked into the kitchen, and let out a scream when she turned on the light and saw a large puddle of blood. In an adjoining room is where Burke found the body of Peters. The neighbors immediately called the police. Upon arriving at the house, the police noticed no signs of break-in, as all of the doors and windows were still locked and chained, but they did establish that a very violent struggle had taken place, obviously. They could follow the trail of blood that started in the kitchen, went down the hall, and ended in the front bedroom. It was clear that Peters had defended himself, as there were self-defense wounds on his arm. And this is really gross and graphic, but one of his fingernails had been completely ripped off, meaning that he had been fighting back. I know. The cops kept searching for any other clues or any other sign, but there was literally nothing. There was no sign left of a murder in the house, which obviously was very puzzling. Like, there are no signs of a break-in, so that would maybe mean that Peters had let the murderer in willingly. Maybe someone he knew.
Did I ever tell you about the time my nail fell off in class?
No.
So this is before us, because it was 5th grade. So we weren't friends yet.
Oh, so like not even fake nails.
Yeah, no, it was my actual fucking nail. Yeah.
How did that happen?
So, do you remember how, I must have told you this a million times, I slammed my thumb on the car door?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
So, the bottom part where it's usually like white was bruised. And I had like a thing on my hand. And the nail kept growing because obviously I didn't cut it.
Right.
and the part that was bruised was starting to grow out. And I remember having a Band-Aid on for a really long time because I was too afraid to take it off.
Yeah.
And one day in class in 5th grade, a binder fell. I did not feel it. Didn't even know what happened until I looked down at my thumb and the nail was gone. So I screamed. My teacher screamed. I must have gone to the nurse because I don't remember anything after that. But years later, this guy that was in my class in elementary school who later went to Broad Run, when everyone was finding each other on Facebook,
Right.
he was like, didn't your nail fall off in class once? And I was like, oh my God. Yes,
it's one
it
of those
did.
things where it's like, no one's going to remember this in a couple years. No, everyone remembers.
Yeah. It's traumatic for everybody. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were no signs of a break-in.
Mm-hmm.
So would that mean that Peters had let the murderer in willingly? But then again, if all the doors were locked, where would that person have gone afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
They searched the house and found Peters' watch and money lying on the dresser in plain sight, so a robbery gone wrong was immediately ruled out. This led police down the path of trying to figure out who could have possibly done this. Peters was a well-liked member of the community, had great neighbors, helped out in the community. He was just like a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was an active musician and was a member of the Denver Guitar Club, a
Ooh.
club where he and his wife would often give guitar and mandolin lessons to other people in the community.
That's cool.
He just seemed like a nice old guy who didn't have any enemies. They questioned neighbors to see if anyone had maybe noticed a suspicious person lurking around the outside of the house, but no leads or tips came in. The police were just stuck. Peter's wife was soon released from the hospital and had to return home a widow. But I read in one place that she fell again.
No.
And again had to spend more time in the hospital because she broke her hip again.
Oh my God.
But she was finally officially home in April of 1942. So she's just having a rough time.
Yeah.
Finally returning home, she wasn't alone. A good friend of hers decided to move in with her.
Okay.
1, so she wouldn't have to be alone after such a tragic event. And 2, to help her out. She had hip surgery. Just be a good friend. I would do it for you, Mackenzie.
Aw, thanks, Betty.
So she had been away from...
your husband would do it for you.
And you could come too. When he said goodbye to me today, he was like, wanted to talk. And I was like, oh, I'll call you after. And he was like, oh, is Mackenzie there? I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, bye, my 2 wives. So his wife had been away from the house for a while, over 5 weeks, recovering at the hospital. And just think of how depressing that would be. You're in the hospital for an injury. You come home to the house your husband died. And it's just awful.
Mm-hmm.
In the following months that Miss Peters and her friend lived in the house, they started to notice some weird things. Strange noises would be heard in the house, coming from weird places. Food would go missing. Things would clearly be out of place when they knew they had it one way the day before. Then one day it escalated when this friend reported seeing someone or something on the back stairs that chattered its teeth at her. I know. Well, that was it for the friend. She was convinced that the house was haunted and promptly moved out. From there...
The smartest person we have met thus far.
I know.
Got the fuck out of there.
It's haunted. I'm gone.
Yes.
So from there, Miss Peters went through a slew of different housekeepers who all kept quitting for the same reason. Hattie Johnson believed that there were invisible forces inside the house. She fled the house in terror and said that she, quote, wasn't going to stay in some haunted house.
Again, smart woman.
All of these women are just
geniuses.
See something, they're gone. Another housekeeper, Edith Clark, also very much believed the house was haunted and that paranormal events were taking place inside of the home. She recalled one experience, where she had seen a white hand coming from around an open door. She screamed and the hand promptly disappeared. She then heard the sound of fleeing footsteps. One friend or housekeeper, depending on the source, reported that she had been hearing mysterious noises coming from the kitchen one night. So she ran to the kitchen without turning on the lights to investigate.
No.
This is when she saw a ghost at the foot of the stairs. She screamed and called the police. I don't know why you would call the police for a ghost, but she told them that the ghost was a filthy, wraith-like thing that disappeared the moment she screamed. That was it for her, and she also moved out. So the reputation of the house spread, and Miss Peters was unable to get another housekeeper. Unable to live on her own, she eventually moved out and went to Western Colorado, Grand Junction, to live with her son. A neighbor who lived next door, Mabel Burke, or maybe Doris, I found Mabel and Doris, but they have the same last name, and her 5 children, also thought that something weird was going on with the house. They knew that Miss Peters had moved out, but they would constantly see the lights inside of the empty, now vacant house turn on and off. One night, Burke even went next door, armed with a baseball bat, to knock on the door to see what was going on. After not getting an answer, she left, as confused as she was when she approached the house. By now, the house had a full-on reputation of being haunted. After all, it was the scene of a brutal unsolved murder. But that's not all that helped with the reputation. First, there were accounts of the housekeepers who had all lived there and experienced something paranormal. But also, people would walk by and they noted that a figure of a man could be seen in the house, which was written off as just being your casual apparition or maybe local pranksters. But the position of the blinds would change. Footsteps and stomping could be heard inside, as well as some other strange noises, and the lights continued to turn on and off. The police were constantly getting calls from concerned neighbors calling about the weird happenings in the house, the abandoned house. So they started to do routine checks. Most like drive-bys, where they would drive by or walk around the perimeter, see if anything unusual was going on. But typically the calls would come, they would check, there would be nothing, they would leave. Another call, check, nothing, leave. This continued on until July 30th, 1942. After so many calls, the Denver police decided to station 2 detectives outside of the house instead of just there to do drive-bys and checks. The 2 stationed were detectives Roy Blockson and William Jackson. They would keep the house under surveillance instead of waiting for the inevitable call from neighbors asking the police to come check on the house yet again. So they wanted to be there, so when the call came, they were there. They could immediately see what was going on. Well, this surveillance paid off. While waiting outside, Blockson and Jackson spotted a face peeking out from one of the windows of the house.
Oh my God.
When this figure noticed that the detectives had noticed it, the face disappeared back behind the curtains. That was all they needed. That was all they needed. They ran inside, expecting to find whoever had been peering out, only to be met with an empty house. That was until they heard a noise upstairs. The sound of a lock clicking sounded from somewhere up on the 2nd floor. The 2 detectives sprinted up the stairs just in time to see a pair of legs pull themselves up through a trapdoor. A trapdoor that had been seen during the initial search of the house after Peter's murder, but a trapdoor that looked too small that no normal-sized human would have been able to fit in it. A trapdoor that the police completely wrote off and walked away from. So now they see this trapdoor. It was barely 8 inches, 20 centimeters wide, and 15 inches or 38 centimeters long. So this is like a little door. The area itself, inside the trapdoor, was 27 inches or 68.58 centimeters high, and 58 inches or 144.78 centimeters wide.
How high?
Like 27 inches.
That's 2 feet.
Yeah. That's not very high. Thankfully, the officers caught up just in time and pulled down their mystery man. The man was pale and weak. He stood almost 6 feet tall and weighed only—
Shut up!
And weighed only about 75 pounds.
What?
Mm-hmm. Denver Police Chief James Childs described the man as, quote, the strangest looking human I have ever seen. He was a tall man, just under 6 feet, but thin as a wilted weed. His dirty hair hung low over his ears, and
How if he's been stealing everybody's food?
And his skin was the ugly, unwashed gray of an overcast sky.
Ew, oh my God.
Well, the house is abandoned now, so there's not much food in there.
He sounds like a dead person.
Right. So he was immediately arrested and taken downtown into police custody. This man was Theodore Edward Conies. We had that other Theodore.
Also not a good Theodore.
No. That's why you were like, I hope yours is better. I was like,
well.
All right, so who was this man? Theodore Conies was born in Petersburg, Illinois on November 10th, 1882 to Thomas H. Conies and Isabella Elam. Thomas was an immigrant from Canada and owned a hardware store in their hometown of Petersburg. Now a little about Theo. He wasn't a very healthy child. He suffered from—
No shit.
Okay, well, this is when he was a child too. He suffered from a lot of health issues, one main concern being his heart. He was told by doctors at a young age to not expect to see his 18th birthday. Sadly, Theo's father died in 1888 when he was only 6, so Isabella took him and the 2 of them moved to a farm near Beloit, Wisconsin. They remained there for a little, and at some point, some sources say 1907, other sources say before 1900, they moved to Denver, Colorado. It was here in the autumn of 1899 that Theo was trying to find something he could do. Due to his health, he wasn't able to play sports, and this kind of helped him gravitate towards music and instruments.
Okay.
A nice family in town had started the mandolin club. The husband and wife would welcome anyone into their home and would teach, mainly youths, how to play the instrument.
Shut up.
The husband, Philip Peters, had just started his career at the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad and had recently married his childhood sweetheart, Helen. Theo was captivated by the music that he would hear coming from the Peters household and even more captivated by how nice the house was. It was everything that Theo had ever imagined and more.
Why do your stories always gotta be creepy?
Because they're fun. So one night, the Peters noticed little Theo looking in through the window and they invited him inside. He started coming
Oh my
over-
God, he's known them for years?
Ding, ding, ding. He started coming over regularly to learn how to play the mandolin. And sometimes he would be the only person learning that evening, and the Peters would invite him to stay for dinner. Over time, and over many visits to this house, so he started to get the layout, he opened up to the Peters, telling them about his failing health, about his heart issues, and about his aspirations, though he was certain none of them would come to fruition. He also spoke about his mother and her declining health and about the death of his father. But over time, these visits and lessons eventually stopped, and Theo continued on with his life. He never finished up high school. I mean, from a young age, he thought that he wasn't going to see 18, so why would you waste time on school? But he wasn't doing great. But for a time, he worked at the Denver Brassworks Company as a bookkeeper in advertising and sales. But even though he was working, Theo experienced homelessness for much of his adult life, never having a stable place to live, often sleeping in doorways and alleys near Denver. What's kind of sad is that he often talked about how he resented the way others looked down on him for his frail condition. He wanted a place where he could be alone and free of the judgment of others. Many years later, on a snowy evening, Theo bumped into an old friend, Philip Peters.
Oh, no.
They got to talking and were able to reconnect a little bit. Coney's, Theo, had told Peter how his mother had lost their money to some con man who had convinced them to sell their property and invest in a mine, which they did.
Oh, no.
But they never saw that man or their money again.
No.
Peters again invited Coney's over for dinner so that they could continue catching up and continue to reconnect. Because they lost a good deal of their money, Coney's mother had continued to work and at the time was working at the Denver Democratic Club as a housekeeper. But tragically, in 1911, she passed away. In 1912, Coney's and Peters would have another run-in where Coney's told Peters about how his mother had passed away and he was lost. He didn't know what he was going to do or where he was going to go. From there, Coney's moved around a bit, drifting from state to state, even heading up to New York to become a salesman for a bit. But eventually, he gave up and returned back to Denver in September of 1941. So they haven't seen each other for,
years.
30 years?
Yeah.
Coney's was 59 at the time. Being back in Denver and very down on his luck, he knew one person who had it all and who was a good acquaintance of his. Philip Peters.
Aww.
He knew Peters was a nice guy and was very well off. He actually had been thinking of Peters a lot over the years. The jealousy he felt for him. Peters had all of this good fortune, a nice house, money, always had a place to sleep.
He was nice.
Yep, and food to eat. He felt it was unfair that Peters had this great life and Coney's had nothing. He intended to head over to Peters' house to ask for some money and maybe for something to eat, forming this plan to try to take what he could from Peters, just, take as much as he could from him. But when he got to the house, Peters wasn't home. He was spending the day with Helen, who was in the hospital after breaking her hip. So instead of deciding to come back another day, he just went for it. He broke into the house and stole some food and money on his own. From that point on, for a while, Coney's would watch the house. He would see Peters leave around the same time every day to visit Helen in the hospital, and he would see when Peters typically got home, so each day he would sneak into the house, take food and money, but always just enough to not be noticed. Sometimes he would even take naps in the bed and just wander through the house, always leaving before Peters returned.
Ew.
I know. But on one of his visits, while snooping around the house to see what else he could find, Coney's found a small trapdoor in the ceiling of a closet.
Oh, my God.
That trapdoor opened up to a small, narrow attic cubbyhole. Coney's wiggled himself in and decided right then and there that this was his new space and this is where he would stay.
What the fuck?
All without Peter's knowledge.
Oh, ew.
I know, I hate it so much.
Oh, my God.
This way, it was easier for him to hear when Peters left, and easier for him to slip from the attic and have all the access he needed and wanted to the house. He could come down, help himself to food, use the bathroom quickly, then sneak right back up. Then one night, knowing Peter's schedule at this point, Coney slipped down in his normal way to get some food. What he didn't know is that on this particular day, Peters had taken a little nap before going to see his wife. Peters wasn't gone. He had been sleeping in the next room when Coney's climbed down, and that was the fateful night that they had the run-in.
No.
So back to the crime stuff. So we're back to Coney's having been arrested and being taken down to the police station. He first denied the murder, but eventually he fully confessed to his crimes, then went into a full retelling of the events that led up to the murder and all that happened after. He originally told police, quote, "I thought this attic would be my shelter during the oncoming winter." So a place he just wanted to stay until the winter outside, until the weather was okay, but he clearly stayed longer than that, way longer than the winter. I read, too, he talked about it at some point. He was like, in the winters, my toes were so cold, and in the summer, it was sweltering, but it's a small price to pay. Ew. He said that the beating had been a split-second decision. He hadn't gone into the situation planning to do that, but when Peter stumbled upon him and clearly didn't recognize him, he just did it. He said that he knew that Peters didn't recognize him because there had been an incident beforehand, which I forgot to add in, but there had been a situation beforehand where he had bumped into him on the street and Peters like didn't even acknowledge him, like didn't notice who he was and just kept walking because it had been 30 years.
Right.
So you change a lot from 19 to 59. So that's also when he was like, he's not going to remember who I am.
Right.
So in his statement, Coney said that the fight went all throughout the house. It started in the kitchen, progressed through the house to the front door, and ended in the front bedroom. He said that after the murder, he retreated back up into the attic where he remained until he was caught in July. The murder happened 9 months prior to him being caught.
Good Lord.
He lived in this attic for 9 months.
Oh my God.
He said that he stayed in the attic after killing Peters because he was afraid to leave. He said, quote, "I did not eat for days, but I lived. I was afraid to go because I knew I'd killed a man." Coney's told the police his side of everything. He said, quote, "Everything would have been all right and Phil Peters would have been alive today if he hadn't caught me robbing the icebox."
Oh my God.
Right, like it's your fault you came into your kitchen.
And I killed you.
It was him or me. I thought he had gone out, but he was taking a nap. I hit him with the stove shaker when he tried to run for help. I don't know if he recognized me. It was nearly 30 years since he'd seen me last. When it was over, I ran to the attic after I washed and dried the shaker. I was sitting on the trap door when you were pounding on it from below the night you found him. I was in the neighborhood in September 1941 and found the house unlocked and no one home. I went in and stole some food. I was in bad shape. My lungs were giving me a lot of trouble and I was at the end of my rope. Fall was coming on and I couldn't face another winter on the road.
Could you imagine
What?
if he died in the attic?
Oh.
And like before he had killed anybody?
What that smell would have been.
Oh my.
I do get to smells though.
Okay.
Fall was coming on and I couldn't face another winter on the road. I had to have a place to stay. I didn't know Miss Peters was in the hospital. I found the hole in the closet, climbed through, and slept and slept. Whenever I heard him downstairs, I kept real still. Then I got bolder and used to shadow him from room to room.
You.
It was sort of a game. It gave me a thrill. It was the first time in my life I'd ever had anyone at my mercy, but I didn't want to hurt him. It was miserable hot in the summer and my feet froze in the winter in that attic, but it was all part of the price I was willing to pay. I can't tell you why I stuck it out. I guess it was mostly because it was a world all my own. I used to go down and look out the windows and watch the postman come by. Nobody's written to me in 25 years. Whenever I saw people on the street, I hated them and would go back to my attic.
What the fuck?
I know. So after hearing this confession, and this is actually pretty funny, the Denver police sought after their smallest officer, Fred Zarnow. Zarnow was sent up into the small, cramped attic to take a look around.
Aww.
He was the only one who could fit.
Poor buddy.
It appeared that Coney's had made a sort of nest for himself up there. Because he was living in this attic, Coney's hadn't bathed in about 9 months.
Oh my God.
And collected his waste up in the attic.
You literally... There's no one home.
Right.
There's no one fucking home.
I know. The smell was apparently so awful that the officer who had to go up there actually threw up from the smell.
I don't blame him.
I don't either. Later, police detective Zarnow told local newspapers, quote, "A man would have to be a spider to stand it long up there." This caused the local newspaper to dub him the Denver Spider-Man of Moncrief Place, more commonly known as the Denver Spider-Man. What?
Well, you know, it was funny because this is not where I expected this story to go.
Do you think it was like a vigilante?
No, I really had no fucking idea. But then when you started talking about the couple, I was like, God, this sounds like the beginning of Spider-Man.
Peter Parker.
Yeah. And then his uncle gets, or his uncle gets killed by whatever. And like the wife isn't there. And then she comes back, and I was like,
that's really funny.
Is someone about to get bit by a spider?
Did I tell you the story I got when I got bit by a spider?
Probably.
Oh my God, I was in bed. And this was when we lived one of our older places. And Joe was, of course, sleeping. And I'm just like chilling on my phone. And then I get this really sharp pain in the back of my leg. And I was like, what the fuck? And I like pull off the sheets. A freaking spider falls from one of the sheets down to the floor. I screamed. I killed it. That shocked Joe awake. He's freaking out. And then, of course, it like hurts and it's itching and it hurts and it's red. So then I'm looking up like brown recluses, black widows. Of course, I made Joe go into the trash can, find the spider so we could look at it. It was just your normal brown house spider, completely harmless. But yeah, I didn't get any powers, but I did get bit by a spider. It was because the other night I was laying in bed, Joe was sleeping, I was on my phone, And you know those like really wispy looking spiders that are just in your house, just like they look like dust. I'm laying in bed and I see something go bloop, and I was like, okay, that was definitely a shadow of my phone because it's dark. I was on my phone. And then I felt something on my chest. And I like went to feel it and there was nothing there. And I was like, what the heck? And then I saw bloop again and I just slammed my hand down, turned on the light, killed the freaking spider. And then of course the rest of the night I'm like pulling off the sheets and checking every now and then. I hated it.
The fact, this is how I know we are so different. We are not the same, because the fact that your first instinct is to kill it and not run away.
Well, see, because it was dark and it was so small that I knew if I didn't hit it that exact moment, it would be lost in the bed.
Even, doesn't matter, even that one, even the other one, I would have screamed and got out of bed and run away.
I did scream and got out of bed, like get out of bed for the first one. I did not run away because Joe was still there.
Right. And you killed it though.
Oh my God. Well,
Like,
I killed it because it was on me and I like,
that's kind of impressive.
thank you. I guess I'm more like the fight and then flight. Oh my God.
I'm straight flight.
I had this, Joe and I were at my parents' house once. We were sleeping in the basement. I don't like the basement because there's spiders, but he doesn't like spiders either. So I found a big fake spider.
Oh, you asshole.
Put it under, because we made the bed on the couch.
This is what you get. You deserve to be bitten by one.
And I put it under the first sheet and I covered the sheet.
You're a dick.
And then I'm just like acting super casual. And I told Joe, I was like, oh, like, you know, you're ready to go to bed. And he was like, yeah. So he walked before me, pulled off the sheet and sees the spider. I have never seen him jump up so high and book it out of the basement. I was in hysterics.
That's really funny until it happens to you.
Yeah, I know. Well, one time he left me. We were in the basement again. And so we had a mouse in the basement. We didn't know we had a mouse in the basement. And we had curtains covering the window. Well, Joe wakes up in the middle of the night and sees the curtain moving, like something was in it. He gets up and runs away. And leaves me on the couch. And so I look up, I scream, I follow him. And I was like, why? And he was like, I didn't know what it was. I just had to get out of there.
See, that's like, I don't panic well. And so when something is happening and I'm freaking out, I can't articulate what's wrong.
I just need you to then hit me and point and run with me. Don't leave me.
Yeah. When we were in a meeting and I just hear my coworker next to me go, look down. I've never backed up so fast. I was sitting in a normal chair too, not even a wheelie chair, and I scooted easily 3 feet across the floor.
Have you seen those things on like TikTok where it's like that? Someone will make a noise, like a fake freak out, and see what their partner does.
Oh yeah, there's this one couple. God, I feel so bad for her.
What was it?
He would always scare her on purpose, but her face was fucking hilarious. There was one I saw that was so funny. I was in tears. I was laughing so hard. I think it is hilarious when people get startled and their reactions.
Oh, I love those.
But although I do laugh at myself, although I don't know if that's out of like nerves, so I don't cry.
Maybe a little mixed both.
But like if I do it like a pretty big, like, oh my God, I'll laugh.
So what did she make that gasp noise about?
Oh, there was a big ass bug.
Oh.
And I backed up and then went on the other side of the bookshelf.
Valid response to a big bug.
I set up my kids right away. I said, if there is a bug in here, do not ask me to do anything. You are on your own.
Good luck and Godspeed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, of course, Conies was tried for his crime in court. His case was presided over by District Judge Stanley H. Johnson, who first and foremost directed a psychological assessment of Conies be performed. He was found legally insane and competent enough to stand trial.
Wait. What?
He was found, legally sane.
Okay.
And competent enough to stand trial.
Okay.
But his defense tried to get an alienist to take a look at him for their defense.
Who?
So an alienist is pretty much an old-timey psychologist. So this is what they used to be called in like the old-timey days, because the people who had mental health issues were usually alienated from society. So they were the alienists.
Huh.
So they would be the ones who would scientifically treat and try to study mental illnesses.
Interesting.
But yeah, so there was a show called The Alienist on TV, but I think it only lasted like a season or two.
There was a show called The Mentalist.
Yeah, these are different.
Yeah. But yeah.
So this defense trying to get these people, it was denied by Judge Johnson. They wanted to see, their point of doing this was they wanted to see if they could reduce his first-degree murder charge and if a lesser charge could be filed instead.
Okay.
But eventually a psychiatrist...
This is in the 1940s, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So eventually a psychiatrist was appointed to examine him, a Dr. Bradford Murphy. He was to examine Coney's and report his findings to the court, or like of if he could stand trial, if he had pre-planned this, all the stuff to see what kind of murder charge they were looking at.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't able to find any results of this.
What the fuck?
Yep, nothing. But I assume... I mean, we'll get to it. So his trial was scheduled for September 21st, but just days before the trial date rolled around, he was...
remember 21st night of September.
So the day before, he was hospitalized at the Denver General Hospital and almost succumbed to pneumonia.
Yeah, he's about 2 inches thick.
Mm-hmm. So he made a full recovery and the trial date was rescheduled. He was finally charged for his crime, the murder. He originally pled innocent to his first-degree murder charge, but was ultimately convicted by a jury. I guess for first-degree murder, because he was sentenced to life imprisonment at the Colorado State Penitentiary in Cannon City in October of 1942. He was a model prisoner while in jail and even took up a job in the prison electric shop.
He had a house now. I'm sure he was peachy keen.
A little jail cell where it was just his.
Yep.
Slightly bigger than his attic.
Had to be not around it. Well, I mean, he did, but they were also weird.
Right. So yeah, he either worked in the electric shop or another source said he worked in the library. But this was weird. So even while in jail on August 5th, he was registered under the Selective Service Act because he was hiding in the attic when his age group, 58 to 59, was supposed to register. So, you know, like
for the draft?
Yeah, like selective service is a thing that men, once they hit 18, I think, have to register for. And it's if there is a draft, it means they'll be entered into the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was about the 40s. So yeah, we're coming up to one of the world wars, I assume.
We're already in it.
Yeah, so
well, we aren't in it, but you're
he's in it.
No. I mean, the United States wasn't in it yet.
So it was interesting too because as I was reading newspaper articles, I was seeing stuff about the war.
God, that's crazy.
I know.
That's wild.
It was weird. But yeah, so since he wasn't there to register when he was supposed to, they made him do it while he was in jail.
Why?
So that if they needed people for the draft.
Oh, shit, he would go?
Yeah, I assume so. That's why they made him register.
I feel like they put almost anybody in jail those days.
Yeah. Well, women would go if they spoke back to their husbands.
Right.
So the source
hysterical.
Yep. So the source also said that he went by the name of Matthew Cornish while in jail, which I thought was odd. And I looked
corny.
So I looked up that name and I couldn't find anything related to that name. So he remained here until his death on May 16th, 1967 at the age of either 84 or 85. His death was announced in the Colorado Springs Gazette. The first line is actually really sad. It says, quote, an 85-year-old forgotten man at the Colorado State Prison died Tuesday at the prison's hospital.
That's depressing.
I know, but he's like a murderer, so it's like you shouldn't be depressed, but it is depressing.
It's a little depressing.
He was buried at Mountain Vale Cemetery in Cannon City. The pallbearers at his funeral would be fellow inmates.
Ooh.
So this case has inspired 2 popular episodes and some popular TV shows.
Ooh.
CSI had an episode titled Stalker. What?
Oh, I'm like, I want to say 98% sure I know
probably
that episode.
So that episode came out in 2002. And The Simpsons had an episode titled The Tiff Who Came to Dinner. So there you have the Denver Spider-Man.
Damn.
I know it was kind of short.
No, but like,
I had to cover it.
Short, sweet, to the point, and still wild.
And so what was weird about this was, so when I moved into this place, I kept telling you, I think there's someone living in the house. And so one of my coworkers was like, you need to look up the Denver Spider-Man. And I was like, what? So I looked it up like 2 years ago and I was like, oh my God, this is so creepy. But then I just like never thought to do it when we came to Colorado. And so I was like, oh my God, I know what I'm going to do this time. And then it's even more creepy because, you know, hearing things in the walls and...
Yeah, I think the episode of CSI, though, he didn't live in the attic. He made like a crawl space under the bed.
Oh, I don't need to hear that because that freaks me out.
Well, I didn't need to hear half this shit, and yet I'm still sitting here.
It just, oh my God, it's just so freaky. There was one time I was sitting on the couch. You know I don't like the crawl space upstairs, like the attic up there. I was sitting on the couch and I was editing. So, of course, I was listening to something creepy. And I heard a noise up there. And I was like, nope.
No, thank you.
And because Joe wasn't home, he was out doing something, so I was by myself, and I was like,
Nah, I'm not gonna go check that one
we're
out.
not gonna look at
We're
that.
not gonna go look. I'm not gonna go look. This was not what I was expecting maybe like an urban legend and somehow it was gonna tie in Spider-Man. Did not expect this at all.
No.
Way to just major plot twist.
Good.
Yes.
Yes. Oh.
And I think the thing that got me was when you said the teeth chattering thing.
I know.
Like that really.
And so it like, you can see why all the housekeepers too were like, oh, it's haunted because they're seeing someone. But I don't know. I don't think haunted would be my first way of doing this. Like if I saw something creepy or whatever, I really don't think I'd think that it was a ghost.
I think it depends. Because if it disappeared as quick as like they're saying.
Okay. I just think though, I get that. I think the weird one too was like the lady who saw the white hand and then she heard someone fleeing.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm like,
at that
a
point,
ghost wouldn't flee.
Right.
A ghost
Nor
is
would
a
you
person.
hear the footsteps.
Right. The ghost is just going to go bloop.
It's going to float.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, done for Spider-Man.
I immediately, like, especially when you talked about him curling up into the crawl space and the teeth thing, I pictured, what's it, Venom?
Yeah.
That's immediately all I kept picturing of this guy, what he looked like.
So it just fit perfectly.
Yeah, just like a big mouth with fucking teeth. Ugh.
Well, thanks for listening.
No,
This is going to be another long episode. I kind of like it though, because like last week I had a really long one and you had like a good length one. And then this one, you had a really long one and I had like a short, good length one. Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Go rate us on Spotify, please. That would be cool. So yeah, go like us on Spotify. Also, if you like us on iTunes, send us an email.
Rate us?
Yes. If you rate us and review us on iTunes, or wherever.
Yeah.
Apple Podcast, whatever it is. Send us an email to ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com and let us know you did that and we'll send you something, a little thank you for doing that. And then with you emailing us, that's when you can also send us your address or your P.O. box or wherever you want, whatever gift we have to go to. Yeah. So I guess stay scary.
Please stay safe.